I played this Final Fantasy for over 7,500 hours back in the day. You could say I was pretty addicted. Straight after Final Fantasy X, Square Enix abandoned voice acting in exchange for a massively multiplayer online role-playing experience.
You serious?
If you try and play Final Fantasy XI today, you'll find it's very dated. To be fair, it was a PlayStation 2 game, and this was well before World of Warcraft kind of redefined MMORPGs. I think a lot of people didn't play, or at least didn't get very far in 11, because it was so hardcore. It required a lot of cooperation and teamwork to get anywhere in the World of Vana'diel. It would take hours to find and join a party, and it was punishing. Whenever you died, you'd lose loads of experience points and could de-level. But if you made the commitment, there was a pretty sweet world. Surprisingly awesome stories with racial prejudice and injustice at its core. Pretty badass characters too. This world literally has its own Batman. And as great as it is, that story would pale in comparison to the personal story you'd create with the friends you'd make on this once incredible journey. To be honest, when I started this series of replaying every Final Fantasy and ranking them as I go, there were two games I was dreading returning to, and 11 is one of them. Don't get me wrong, I loved Final Fantasy XI back in the day for what it was, but it was genuinely a little depressing travelling the once bustling world of Vana'diel and finding it void of any players and friends. 11 has been transformed into more of a single player experience with a trust system that allows you to summon non-player characters to join you. Kinda cool, you can make a team of story characters that are unlocked as you progress the story, but they're kind of way overpowered. It's a very different game now, so much so that players have modded private servers to recreate the original experience. And these private servers pull in a good number of old players. So it was a very different experience starting over this time, but I committed for my Final Fantasy series. And speaking of committing, if you're enjoying this, consider subbing to Peter Bytes or liking the video for more content like this. Cover lots of RPGs, and that includes my Final Fantasy series where I'm replaying them all and ranking them against each other as I go. Thank you. Final Fantasy XI begins with what might be the darkest opening cinematic in the series. We get to see the city of Tavnazan being crushed by the Shadow Lord's Beastmen armies. We see the perspective of two kids trying to escape, and it gets pretty dark with the sister being slaughtered by a group of orcs. Years later, after the Shadow Lord's defeat, we start Final Fantasy XI in one of three cities. The Kingdom of Sandoria, which is ruled by elven nobility and fiercely religious, the Federation of Windurst with a strong magical culture, and the Republic of Bastok, which is a more industrial city. You can play as Elven, Turuturu, Mithra, Galka, and Humies, which are just humans, and that's what I made to recreate my original character. You can start in any of the three cities, but you get a pretty sweet bonus ring if you start in your race's capital city. I started in Bastok, I wandered about a bit and eventually did my first mission, to retrieve a report from within Bastok's mines. While I'm doing this, we learn there's a bit of racial tension brewing in the mines between the humans and Galka. I then took my first steps outside the city to do some leveling up. So with Final Fantasy XI, the job system returns. We freely swap jobs and can start as a warrior, monk, white mage, black mage, red mage, or thief. You can unlock more advanced jobs later in the game with 22 jobs in total. We haven't had a true job system like this since Final Fantasy V, so it was very nice to see this job system return. I went with red mage this time. They're an all-rounder that can do a bit of defensive or offensive magic, white and black magic. So generally in Final Fantasy XI, you want to complete major story missions and quests, and you'd level up mainly by grinding monsters. It's a bit old school. And to be honest, gameplay is clunky and slow, with a lot of auto attacks and weaving in abilities and spells you unlock. Slow would be an understatement, with every job having a special ability that had a 2-hour cooldown. In today's version of the game, the cooldown has been reduced to 1 hour, but that's still a lot of time for just one ability. So yeah, I admit, really clunky and slow. To be fair, this MMORPG was on the PlayStation 2. But I think Final Fantasy XI plays to its strengths. Gameplay is methodical and full of micro decision-making moments. If party members use the right weapon skills in sequence, they can create skill chains which create different explosions for extra damage. And then if any casters throw their spells into that skill chain, they'll cause a magic burst, which means bonus damage. This level of cooperative gameplay with your abilities is rarely seen in modern day MMORPGs. Bit of Guild Wars 2 comes to mind. But I think the skill chain and magic burst system really shines in 11, and only works because the gameplay is so slow paced and methodical. Eventually I unlocked Trust. This is an entirely new system to the game that allows me to summon in non-player characters to join my party. Like I said earlier, kind of really cool that you can unlock trusts of story characters as you progress the story, but I feel mixed on the trust system. While I think Final Fantasy XI is something best played cooperatively with other players, 11 is now over 20 years old, and the lack of new players is what's created the need for this trust system. But holy crap, these trusts are way overpowered. They've killed groups of monsters in a single hit. So I leveled up a bit and did the first few missions in Bastuk. I got introduced to some of Bastuk's major story characters, including Zeid, who's completely ripped in 11. This Zeid looks like he's been on steroids compared to the Robin Williams Zeid in 8. My first big mission was to travel the world and report documents to the embassies of the other two starting nations, Sandoria and Windhurst. The World of Vana'diel is pretty huge and I had to make this journey on foot. I had to travel highlands, Valkrum dunes, plateaus and forests to reach Sandoria. I've got to admit I genuinely enjoyed the journey of travelling to these other nations' lands. It took a lot of time and it felt like an actual world. In Sandoria, I helped exterminate an orc war boss, and before visiting the Windhurst embassy, I unlocked the sub job system. And just like in Final Fantasy V, you can have your main job, like my Red Mage, then assign a secondary job and you'll get half the power of that second job. This adds a layer of customization to Final Fantasy XI. Maybe you want to be a Red Mage that specializes in white magic, black magic, or even dual wielding and ninjutsu by subbing ninja. You can mix any two jobs together and there's some pretty cool combinations to discover. So I still had to report to the Windhurst embassy, and that was at the other side of the world. I needed to take a ship from Selbina. That ship operates in real time and it's a lengthy journey, but it does build that feeling of 11's living world. After a bit more travelling, I arrive at Windhurst's embassy, and I'm tasked with investigating the nearby Beastmen lair. For me, this is where the story really picks up. We get our first real boss battle with a Shadow Dragon and a Dark Messenger that warns that the Shadow Lord is returning. Back in Bastuk, we're tasked in joining a mission to slaughter some Beastmen, which was a good opportunity to level up. So leveling up in this modern version of the game is a cakewalk, but I can't stress just how hardcore it used to be. Everything was tougher, there was no trust system, I'd spend hours looking for parties to join to level up. And if I died, I'd lose tons of hard-earned experience points, and it was possible to even de-level. While it sounds like a terrible experience, it was double-edged. It added weight to everything you accomplished. Players were friendlier and more willing to work together. It was so hardcore. Every little piece of gear you had made a difference, and you were incentivized to go find or farm some of that better gear. When I look back at my old character, it's almost like every piece of equipment was not only unique, but there's some gigantic epic tale behind how I acquired it, often involving the help of my guild or friends. And I think that's something missing from a lot of modern MMORPGs, where it often feels like I'm just showered with gear with generic stats on. After hunting some beastmen, it was the next big mission to journey to the fourth city, Jeuno. Remember the boy in the opening cinematic? You can find him here in Jeuno. In Jeuno, I was able to earn a Chocobo license by helping tame a Chocobo, and being able to rent and ride a Chocobo was a pretty sweet reward for how far I've come. Turns out the ambassador I had to report to has gone missing, and so begins the rescue mission. I remember about 20 years ago, this was the very first guild experience I had in Final Fantasy XI, with everyone in my guild gathering together in a raid group to tackle and climb the floors of this tower and rescue the ambassador. It was pretty awesome and what Final Fantasy XI was all about. We're rewarded and get to meet the shady Archduke of Jeuno and his creepy brother. We're tasked with retrieving 3 Magicite from deep within Beastmen's strongholds. This was another big mission I did as a guild. When you go to retrieve each piece of Magicite, you experience flashbacks of some of the shady stuff each of the nations have done in the past, as well as a vision into the nations coming together for a shared expedition into the Northlands, which ends with them turning on each other. And this is what originally gave birth to the Shadow Lord and his hatred. We hand over the Magicite and we're rewarded with an airship pass, allowing us to travel between cities by airship. This doesn't sound like much in modern Final Fantasy XI, where you can literally teleport everywhere you've already been, but this airship pass was a huge deal back in the day. It was a huge convenience. We get a report that all the nation's leaders have been attacked by beastmen looking to break the Shadow Lord's seal, and we rush back home with our newly acquired airship pass. We're then tasked with heading north, investigating the possible return of the Shadow Lord. This is where my personal favourite 11 character enters the story, Zeid. This guy is literally the Batman of Final Fantasy XI. He's a badass Dark Knight and defeated the Shadow Lord in the past. The final mission is to venture deep into the Shadow Lord's castle throne room and prevent his resurrection, which involves a lot of sneaking around. And one thing you can do in Final Fantasy XI is cast magic to cancel out any sound you make and turn yourself invisible. This way you can sneak past loads of enemies. Of course, the Shadow Lord ends up getting resurrected and it's a pretty awesome fight. We learn the Shadow Lord is that Galka from the past, corrupted by despair and hatred. Raugrim comes to his senses and seeks redemption in his final moments. We kinda go unconscious and stagger out of the throne room. The Shadow Lord's defeat marks the original Final Fantasy XI ending. It's quite the journey. Despite the clunky gameplay and how insanely hardcore it used to be, it's the first cooperative Final Fantasy story, and I think it's great. My favourite part of returning was just travelling the world and going on these big missions to all the different cities at the different ends of the world. The story does continue through a series of expansion packs, and the story gets even better. The next expansion pack, Rise of the Zilliot, starts by showing us what we missed while we were unconscious during that final fight. That shady Archduke of Jeuno comes in, awakening some archangels, and defeats us as well as the Shadow Lord, setting up a pretty epic chain of stories from here on. I cannot stress just how much of a different experience this game was 20 years ago. It was hardcore, challenging, punishing. It was a true MMORPG. There wasn't much you could accomplish on your own. You were forced to play with others and make friends. Like me, there's a lot of players out there who miss that original experience, and they've modded the game and run private servers to recreate that original experience, which is no longer offered by Square Enix. A similar thing kind of happened with World of Warcraft and World of Warcraft Classic, and I think that's something I'd like to check out and try one day. Now, this is where I'd normally rank this Final Fantasy, but being an MMORPG, it would be completely unfair to compare this to a single player game. For what it is right now, maybe I could squeeze it in here. Yeah, gameplay is dated as hell, but I genuinely enjoyed getting to travel the world and re-experience the story. While for the cooperative experience and challenges I overcame with friends and guilds nearly 20 years ago, this could easily go in the #1 slot, so I'm just going to put 11 to the side. Final Fantasy 12 next, probably going to take me a little while to get the video out for that one. Alright, have a good one.